Imagine for me, if you will, a quiet bedroom, late in the evening, moonlight and starlight trying to break through the closed shades. The room, dark, enough to no longer rely on your eyes to tell you its breadth and width. It is the hour when your peaceful sleep should allow for a perfectly silent night. But peace would be the last thing Jessica Anderson would be allowed to have tonight. No. Don't. Don't stay here. Leave me. Jessica's dream escaped from her mind in the form of panic whispers. Let's take a look at what it is she is dreaming. Let me help you paint a picture of where you are. Better yet, let me help you stand next to me as we watch Jessica's dream unfold. Do you hear the ocean? Do you feel the breeze coming off of it? It's warm. It's damp, with the hint of sea salt and summer. Jessica can feel it. It blows her hair as she turns around looking for something. As she turns, her long brown hair flies in the wind. She does her best to push it out of the way. For a brief moment, she thought of her modeling photo shoots. The young actress had done that kind of work with a big fan blowing in her face to give her that wind-blown hair look. This felt like that. But that wasn't the only reason this place felt familiar. The petite girl crinkled her freckled-covered nose as she tried to place the memory. Jessica had a sense of déjà vu. She had that thought before, of the wind reminding her of modeling, last time she was standing on this beach. All of it, it was the same. The feeling of the sand between her toes. The breeze, the clothes she was wearing. It was all the same. She looked at her loose-fitting orange cream sundress. She feels her sheer white shawl around her shoulders. Everything was the same. The only thing that was missing was... She stopped turning. She could have sworn that her heart had stopped at the same time. For she had come face to face with a ghost. There, no less than 20 yards away from her, sitting on the sand dune playing with his guitar, was Evan Jones. Just like he always was. Like nothing had changed. Jessica was beside herself in disbelief. It was exactly like it was on that day almost a full year ago. Jessica tried to forget every detail about that day, but she couldn't. No, every detail was exactly the same. She began to take steps towards him. With every step she took, the more and more the nostalgic memories took over her. The way he hung his head down looking at his guitar when he played. The way his blonde hair moved as he bobbed his head to the rhythm. That blue and white button-up, the one she had bought him. The board shorts, the white Chuck Taylors. The way he sat cross-legged on the sand dune. It was everything that was Evan. Everything was so familiar. Everything that she wanted to remember, but it was everything that she longed to forget. She now stood only 5 feet from him. She simply stared at him, not willing to believe that he was really there. She couldn't let herself enjoy seeing this man before her. She reached out to touch him, to prove herself that this was a dream. To prove that this wasn't real. As she drew close to him, she caught a whiff of his scent. And that was all her heart could bear. If this was a dream, she didn't want to break the spell. She, for a moment, wanted to believe he was there. She withdrew her hand and stepped back. She stared at him, afraid that if he were to look up and see her, that he might disappear. She wished she could look into his eyes. Those ice blue eyes. The kind that, when they looked at her, she knew that she was loved, wanted, safe. She took a chance, fighting down her fear and disbelief.
Evan?
Her voice was timid. He may not have been able to hear her over his strumming. It's not like that hasn't happened before. She could recall a dozen times when she walked into the school's practice studios and wouldn't be able to get his attention. It's like he dropped into a trance when he would get into his music. This, too, was all too familiar. Jessica swallowed hard. She had to be direct, like always.
Evan Jones, what are you doing here?
Her voice was firm this time, but it didn't seem to reach Evan's ears. He just went right along playing, as if she wasn't even there. Jessica had to admit to herself that this wasn't all that out of the ordinary for him. She sighed. So she did what she always did. She got right in his face and waved both of her hands.
Earth to Evan Jones, hello, Jessica here. Anybody home?
Evan stopped strumming. He froze for a second. Jessica, thinking she might have annoyed him, took a step back. Sometimes when he played, he would ignore her on purpose while trying to figure something out. That's how he thought, sitting there, playing on his guitar. He looked up, but not at her. He peered off to his right, pushed his hair off to the side and waved with a big smile. Jessica missed that smile.
Hey, you Jess. How's it going?
Jessica became confused. Why was he waving over there and calling out to her when she was standing right there in front of him?
Evan, I'm right. Don't stop playing because of me.
It was her very own voice that caught her off guard and kept the words from coming out of her mouth. Jessica turned to look in the direction that Evan was staring, and then saw walking towards them a small, brown-haired, brown-eyed girl with freckles across her nose, wearing an orange cream sundress and a sheer white shawl. She kept her long hair pulled back with a flowered hairpin. The smile she wore was one Jessica hadn't seen in the mirror since that day almost a year ago. Jessica had come face to face with a version of herself that had died a year ago. This girl, the one with that smile, the one with those bright eyes, that one didn't exist anymore. But she was right here, walking towards Evan. Jessica looked back to Evan. He put his guitar down and stood. What? I can't get up to say hi to the girl that I love? As soon as he said this, the two of them embraced. He kissed her forehead. The real Jessica stood there. She ran her hand over the spot that he had kissed her a year ago. She remembered this. This is how it happened. Although he was the type of guy to relax by sitting alone and playing guitar on the beach, his body told an entirely different story. The man was a football player through and through. He stood head and shoulders over the petite actress and wrapped her up in his powerful arms. Jessica put her arms around herself as she stared at this version of herself being held in that warm, powerful, loving embrace from the man who had so deeply loved her like she had never felt before. The other Jessica had looked up at Evan and smiled.
Well, I guess if you're going to say hi like this, it's totally okay if you stop playing. Only for the moment, though.
The two slipped out of the embrace. However, Evan didn't relinquish her hands. He holds on to them, looking down at her. The smile hasn't left his lips.
Oh, is that so? That's all I'm good for, huh? Hugs, kisses, and guitar. I get it. You just use me for what I do, not who I am. I get it.
A laugh slipped from the other Jessica's control. She covered her mouth. Smiling up at him, she reaches up as far as she can to push his scruffy hair away from his eyes.
you can't forget about your good looks. I only like you for that too.
Evan grabbed her hand and holds them both again.
Oh, heaven forbid that we forget that. You're lucky I know you're kidding. Come here.
Evan nearly pulls the other Jessica off balance as he sat the two of them down on the sand dune. Picking up the guitar again, he started to play.
You're lucky I love you.
The other Jessica, as best she could, scooted on the sand to get behind him. As he played, she wrapped her arms around his shoulders and leaned into him.
I know. I really do know.
She sat there leaning on the man she loved while he played for her. Jessica could see the contentment, the joy, written all over her face. She could see the look of love in Evan's eyes each time he would look at her. Well, the other version of her. She still held herself, but it wasn't because she wished his arms were actually around her. They had been around her. This was a memory. All of this had happened. She held herself because she was guarding herself against the feelings that accompanied the memory. She did her best to fight back the tears that were welling up in her eyes. If she opened herself up to the memory and the good feelings of love and joy, she would have to open herself up to something much darker.
Why couldn't today's memories just end here? This would have been great. We could have skipped it all together, spent the day on the beach. We could have done anything else. Anything but going there.
Evan's strumming began to slow, and it eventually came to a stop. The other Jessica still clung to him from behind. She rested her head on his shoulders. Evan put his guitar down and tried to look back at her.
Are you comfortable back there?
She nodded her head. He could feel it more than see it. A laugh that was little more than air slipping from his nose found its way out.
I thought you were in a rush to get to your thing, your acting workshop thing.
The real Jessica's heart froze at those words. Words that she truly never wanted to hear again. The other Jessica moved around to Evan's side. She leaned on him, grabbing his hand and comparing the size of hers to his.
It doesn't start for a while. We have time.
The other Jessica sits herself up in an upright position, looking at Evan with a worried face.
You haven't been waiting here long, have you? I didn't mean to tell you to meet me so early. You had stuff to do, didn't you? Oh, I'm such an idiot. I was just thinking about spending time with you before we went. I didn't mean to.
Yes. Relax. It's not that big a deal. I didn't have anything to do. I just forgot what time you said the thing was. That's all. Relax.
Evan had grabbed onto the other Jessica's shoulders to make her calm down. He let go and laid back against the sand dune beside her. She took a breath and laid next to him. Evan grabbed onto her hand.
If we have time.
Why did I ever think any of this was a good idea? Oh, yeah, okay. Date the Christian boy. He's a great guy. Yeah, he was a great guy.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. He's not a great guy anymore. No thanks to you. I don't want this memory anymore. I don't want to see this. Isn't it enough to have lived it once? Why did you take him there, Jess? Why didn't you just stay on the beach? You were happy there. Both of you were happy. Oh, no. I can't even think like that. I can't pretend that it would have ended okay in the end anyway. I know. Trust me. I lied to him. I thought this should be fun. I made him think that I was something that I wasn't. If I didn't do that, he would have never fallen in love with me. None of this would have happened. Just stay here. I don't want to see that again. I don't want to see the rest of this day.
So, what time does it start exactly?
Well, soon-ish. I guess we can make our way over there. So, are you sure you really want to come to this with me?
Evan sat back up and looked down at the other Jessica laying there. The stare was all he really needed. Written on his face was an expression of, "Really? Are you really asking me this?" His words were much more carefully chosen than his facial expression.
Jess, I already told you. I'm not going to back out of it. You asked me to come. Even though it's acting, it's something you love. So I'm going to have this experience with you.
The other Jessica's brown eyes looked almost surprised. It was a beautiful happiness. She quickly pushed herself up and planted her lips right on his. The kiss surprised Evan for a moment. But that surprise didn't last long. He pulled her in and kissed her back. The real Jessica looked away. She didn't want to see this again. The love she saw, it hurt her heart. When their kiss had ended, the other Jessica looked up into Evan's eyes. She pushed his hair out of the way once more so that she could see them more clearly.
Thank you. Thank you for being so sweet to me.
Evan stood to his feet and pulled her up. He stood on level ground while she stood up on the sand dune. They stood eye to eye. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her close.
No offense, but I'm not trying to be sweet. I'm trying to be real. I'm a man of my word. Every word. From what I told you when we began, up until now.
Okay, now you're being sweet.
She put her forehead against his as she said this with a giggle. Evan smiled, picked her up, and he started to spin around. He listened to her laugh as she held on tightly. Then he told her,
Yeah, you're right. I can be serious and I can be sweet, but whatever I say, you can always trust it. Always.
Jessica watched the two of them spinning. Remember how it felt to have him hold her like that. She wanted to walk up to her old self and smack her across the face. Her thoughts echoed.
How dare you do what you did to him? He loved you. Couldn't you see that? And this is how you treat him?
Evan put Jessica down and held her hands once again.
So, should we be off to this workshop thing?
I guess there's no harm in being early, the other Jessica said with a coy smile.
I can show you around the building a little bit, and then we can get good seats. It'll be fun.
Evan released one of her hands but kept the other. The two started heading off.
Then let's go.
Jessica saw the two of them heading off the beach towards the steps that led up to the street level. Her heart jumped into her throat. Before she knew it, she was right on their heels.
No! Evan! Wait! You can't go there!
Jessica reached after the free hand of the other her, grabbing after her wrist. Her hand went right through. It was as if she wasn't even there. The other Jessica didn't even seem to notice. She just looked up at Evan and smiled. He smiled back down at her. Urgency pulsed through Jessica's system. She ran in front of them to the steps and tried to block Evan's way.
I'm serious, Evan. You can't go there. Don't listen to her. I mean me. Don't listen to me. I know you love me and you'd go anywhere I'd go. I know you would because you told me so. But don't go there. Go away from me. Just don't.
Evan passed right through her, as if it was her who were the ghost. Her outstretched arms that were meant to meet his broad shoulders did nothing to stop him. Just like that day, she was powerless to stop him. Powerless. She stood there with her arms out, her face in disbelief. A tear fell from her eye as a whisper fell from her lips.
No.
The tear fell from her face. Before it hit the sand at the base of the stairs, the scene before her changed.